Great. I am Jeremy Tank. I am, well, if you're watching this, I am your brand guy, and I'm basically here to talk today about archetypes. And I love archetypes because archetypes are sort of that mashup between psychology, mythology, and brand and marketing for me. They're just super interesting. So let's just jump right in because I want to help you build your brand, and archetypes are a great way to help you build your brand. So let's start off today. I actually brought a couple of notes because this is something that I want to speak kind of directly to and make sure I stay on task to help you out. So the first thing, why archetypes are important. Archetypes, ooh, let's go back. The way that your brain processes information. Let's talk about that real quick. Let's talk about the anatomy of your brain and how your brain, how the neurons in your brain actually function. Because archetypes work within this structure really well. Your brain functions on stories. And your brain, it's a little funny to say your brain functions on stories, but the way that your brain works is it's constantly receiving information from outside around you and from within you, and your brain is capturing all of this information through chemical signals, through electrical signals, through light signals, through all these different types of signals, and it is creating an image of the world around you within itself. It's not it's We honestly don't can't tell if what is outside of us is real or unreal, but our brain makes it real. And the way that it does that is that it creates these stories from the sensory inputs. And archetypes are powerful because throughout society, throughout time, we have generated these ideas of standard types of characters, standard types of behavior that are personified by archetypes. And when the brain is processing a lot of this stuff, it uses comparison and contrast. That's actually how we learn. We learn by comparing what we think will happen with what actually happens. And in the split second that something happens, we're comparing what actually happens and what we sense and what we feel compared to what we believed would happen before that event. And when we recognize the difference there and that contrast that happens within the brain, that's learning. That is life, and that's learning, that's growing. So it's a really powerful tool, this way that we process. In archetypes, what happens is that television, radio, books, you can see my bookshelf behind me. I love reading, I love all these books. A lot of them come up with a type of character, a type of archetype that moves through the progression of the story, through contrast, through conflict, through coming up against circumstances, and that conflict forces them to grow. It forces them to make a choice and do something different, and it forces the next step in their life. And this is basically an archetype of the hero, right? A lot of stories, a lot of television are all based around who's my hero, who's the villain, the antagonist that is against them, and then the conflict, the contrast of opinion that is happening within them. The human brain activates on contrast and comparison. In Buddhism, it's desire uh, suffering is caused by desire, and judgment is this perception of desire outside or inside against another thing. A judgment is saying it's one thing or another. Well, this is true just in general of the mind, and the more that we study neuroscience, the more that we study behavioral science, we learn that the brain really is just this giant contrasting mechanism, and the greater contrast we have in something, the greater control we have to tell these stories that the brain receives and makes further judgments and directions on. I hope that makes some sense. Compare and contrast. Oh, so archetypes were sort of, I don't want to say discovered, but certainly identified by Carl Jung. And Carl Jung was looking through a lot of different stories across the world and comparing them and contrasting them, and identified 12 primary character types. And he called them archetypes. And these archetypes seemed to be, well, they seem to hold 12 different categories of being that could be put into stories. And and people really responded to this because it outlined how culture, how people, how reactions, how a lot of this stuff across time has really been has really been similar, right? Right, since ancient Greece, since Rome, since before any of those, actually. A lot of these stories, I think of the Epic of Gilgamesh. A lot of these stories hold the same types of elements again and again and again moving forward. You think of even Hollywood today, we're rehashing stories. It's the same types of stories over and over again. On Netflix, it's always the same kinds of stories over and over again. And eventually you start to see the patterns and you can guess what's going to happen next in each of the episodes. And if they deviate, it throws you. Well, it's because the characters are typal. A three-dimensional character, three-dimensional meaning it's a little bit more like the real world. It's more dimensional. You, as you're running your business, your practice, whatever, you are a three-dimensional character. You are not limited by these sort of two-dimensional archetype um, motivations. There's much more to you: happiness, sadness, longing. But archetype characters, they're very two-dimensional, and that's good in a lot of ways, because when you're trying to get a point across, when you're trying to share something complex, these simplified characters, these simplified thoughts make it easier for both the communicator and the person, audience, whomever being communicated um, to receive who that person is and what they're trying to accomplish and what they're trying to do. And Joseph Campbell took the idea of archetypes, and he wrote the book The Heroes, or I can't remember the name of the book at the moment, but it's about the hero's journey, and that's sort of, if you watch Star Wars, it's the hero's journey. If you look at a lot of the Greek myths, it's the hero's journey. I think of the movie Aragon as well as the books of that whole series. That's the hero's journey. It's starting out one place and moving through all these challenges to overcome them, and the hero is one of these 12 archetypes. The magician or the wizard is another one of these archetypes, and in those stories, that would be Ben Kenobi. That would be who's the guy from Aragon? Anyway, somebody will mention it down in the comments, right? Call me out. I can't remember my Aragon at the moment. Um, I'm a big movie guy. I'm a big stories guy. I love telling stories, and I recognize how deeply stories really impact the brain because it bypasses a lot of the conscious judgment. And it's almost when you get into a storytelling zone, especially using archetypes, especially using these broad categories that people intrinsically understand, you actually move past the conscious judgment and into the flow state of the subconscious, where the subconscious identifies with what's happening and starts to create a story in the head. Am I like this hero? Am I like this villain? Am I like this wizard or sage? Am I like this every person? And this is the power of stories, and archetypes. When you combine these thoughts of telling a story, it bypasses some of that conscious thought and moves directly into a subconscious mind, so that you start helping people, frankly, align with your brand, align with your story, align with your business, and you're helping them because they're identifying where they fall in the story. And there's a book by Donald Miller, he's a branding guy, called Brand Story, where he really breaks down the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, in terms of archetypes. And Donald Miller says that in that book, he writes that your brand is not Luke Skywalker. Okay, your brand is not the hero, because when you're working with customers, when you're sharing what you do, when you're trying to solve problems, when you're trying to provide a service, your customer, your audience, whomever they are, you in this instance, for me, you are Luke Skywalker. You are Ellen Ripley from the Aliens series. You are the person who has to overcome all of your challenges. You're trying to build a business. You're trying to build a brand. You are taking all of the right steps every day after day to try and conquer this mountain, right? And my role, and this is the reason I'm on here now, is to share with you the tools that you need to be Obi-Wan Kenobi, to be how about I get to be Bishop from Aliens, right? The android that helps. Um, it's to facilitate your brand, your business, whatever it is. you aren't the hero of the story. You are there to facilitate the hero in making the choices that they need to move the path forward. And the path forward in your business is really to help them choose you to solve their problems, to learn something that they need from you, to invest with you, to move through the stuff to get to their problems and to solve them. So that's sort of how archetypes came about, and why they're really important, because they are, you know, I don't want to say universal because we don't know what the rest of the universe is doing, and really we don't even know what we've identified in the Amazon, and some of those remote tribes. They don't speak, they don't think, they don't work the same way telling stories, but they still have stories, they still have nature, they still have ways to relate to one another. It's just not through the same verbal cues. And a lot of our society is built around this kind of European lineage, and that is infiltrated everything. That has a lot of this archetype buildup, a lot of this hero structure, a lot of the everyman structure. So it becomes like a societal subconscious training to resonate with these stories and with these types of characters. So using this in your business, in your brand, is really powerful because we're societally trained to respond this way, in a powerful way, to archetypes. So what are the 12 archetypes? I'm looking down at my notes here. What are the 12 archetypes? And I wrote these out specifically because I don't always remember them, and I'll tell you why in just one moment. So the archetypes, the 12 Jungian archetypes, are the innocent, everyman, hero, outlaw, explorer, creator, ruler, magician, lover, caregiver, jester, and sage. And the reason I don't choose to remember all of those is because the archetypes I use in my branding and my manifest design process that I will talk about at the end of this video, um, I actually break those down a little bit further. So I've got about 5 archetypes for each of the main ones. And it's because there are subtle different um, motivations between each one. For example, I was working with somebody recently, and she had the seeker archetype. The seeker archetype is a subset of the explorer archetype. The explorer is a Jungian archetype who, their motivation is to get out and see the world and experience life and to embrace those emotions and feelings. And brands like Jeep are an explorer archetype. Jeep is the big one. There's REI is an explorer archetype. Like when you're getting out in nature, when you're exploring nature, you know, you want to have the right supplies to get out there and be with it. That's an explorer archetype. But this woman I was working with, Joe, she she was a seeker, and a seeker is a subset of explorer. And the seeker doesn't look outward for answers. A seeker looks inward for answers. They turn the eye inward and they say, okay, let me explore this next step inside. And that's really powerful because that archetype, she's a hypnotherapist. So what happens is she says, this is what I am doing. This is how she shares that archetype with her audience. It sounds like, um, you know, when you're ready to turn inwards and find these answers, I'm already doing this searching. This is what I do. So you can turn to me because I can lead you down this path for yourself, right? That's how a seeker and explorer might be different. But you can see just by me sharing that with you how archetypes can sort of affect the message that you are sharing outward to be more effective. Um, so in a lot of ways, they're like a shortcut, a psychological shortcut to help you communicate your wishes, your goals, your desires, to help somebody else move along. And if you want to find your archetype, there are lots of different online tools like Archetype games, Archetype, you name it, quizzes, that sort of thing. Everybody uses them because they're so cool, and you know they're in Cosmopolitan all the time. Um, Cosmopolitan? Does anybody actually ever say that anymore? Or is it just Cosmo magazine? Archetypes are one of those fun things that it's great for you to identify for yourself as just as you, to see how that turns out, but also, you know, look at it as your brand, what your brand is bringing, what your business is bringing in the world, what your product or your service is bringing in the world. You can have 3 different services, and each one has a different archetype depending on the uh, the goal that it is trying to do, right? I hope this starts to make sense with you guys a little bit, and really how powerful these things are. Every time you tell a story, you are activating imagination within your audience's brain. And that the frequency, the vibration of imagination is, it creates, it connects, and it's different than being sold to. Being sold to is saying, I do a certain thing and you should buy it. But when you describe, I showed up at the store and then I wandered the halls of the store and I had to stop because I was caught by attention by this giant mountain of hammers. It doesn't matter. Like, whatever you tell in your story, it's only relevant to you, but it really creates a deeper impact because archetypes and stories are shortcuts for the brain. And you can use these shortcuts in your brand. And I guess I just kind of want to wrap this up and say, if this is something that interests you, I can recommend a great book. Just comment book down below and I can recommend a great book. I've got to pull it out and figure out what the name of it is one more time, that details all of these things. You could, again, also search online for archetype quizzes or games. There's a great brand strategist, the psychology-driven brand strategist, Kay Putnam. If you're really into archetypes and you want to build your brand specifically off of what she shares, look her up because she's got a great quiz. In my program, we actually do a couple different archetypes. We do a primary archetype for you and a secondary archetype because I feel like a primary motivation is great. A secondary one is even better because it supports what's going on with that first one. But also we try to figure out what the archetype is for your customers, your audience, because if you can figure out that you are an explorer and your potential customer is a sage or a magician, it changes how you present your story. And your story is why you're in business, why you're offering what you're offering. And when you understand the general idea behind archetypes and who you're speaking with and how you're speaking because of your archetype, it creates this bridge between everybody. And is branding is all about creating this bridge, this communication, this understanding, this excitement to help solve problems and do things and provide service and create growth. Branding is all about sharing all of this stuff and creating communication, because the more communication you share, the more that people can see who you are and understand what you do and why you do it. It differentiates you from everybody else like you. That's why social media and getting on these live things and doing this sort of thing is so important, because the more that you share who you are, the more that you are differentiating yourself. You are standing out as unique. So, um, so archetypes take that to another level because you stand out as you and unique. And when you present yourself through the lens of the archetype, you also present yourself through a sort of generic lens, and it shortcuts the brain of your receiver into honestly comparing you and contrasting you with every other type of archetype like that, so that you end up imbued with basically superhuman um, attributes that you may not have projected. However, they are part of the standard cultural archetype. And so that's why using these tools as part of your brand, as part of your business, as part of selling whatever it is you're selling is super powerful, because you're anchoring on some really ancient storytelling skills. So that's about all for today. If you like these videos, if you like what I'm sharing, I'm going to keep trying to share some of this branding content, some more tips to help you build your brand online, offline, or wherever you are. And just really, it's about understanding you. And the more that I've gotten into my Manifest Design program, the more people that I'm helping. Just so you know, it's an 8-week program. It's about an hour to an hour and a half every week, and we work through this whole process right through from vision to archetypes to customers, brand attributes, you name it. There's a lot of stuff. And one of the final weeks is hypnotherapy, because so much of this, where marketing and sales leans into really pushing and pulling people to get attention, branding is about communication, and communication is about how you view yourself and how others view you. And when others view you well, it's your reputation, that's your brand. And when you view yourself well, it shows and it resonates. So that's what I'm trying to help here. That's why hypnosis and branding to me go hand in hand, because if you're successful and you believe you're successful and you believe in what you're doing and you want to help people, then it shows from every angle. And yeah, so I'm going to try and help you guys build your brands from every angle. All right. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed this. Share, comment, like, do the thing, because the more people that I help, then the more people I help, right? I love that. I absolutely love that. Thanks so much. Take care, and talk to you later. Bye.